given to a person in the feedback form for him or her to control and lower his or her heart rate. Similarly, the respiration rate, which is in a positive correlation with the heart rate, you must have seen the moment a person's heart rate or the anxiety increases, his or her respiration rate also increases. So it is important to understand these two factors and their correlation, but in an amplified form. You see, we don't understand stress in the sense that we take it for granted. That is also called by Sele as general adaptation syndrome, that we are used to certain things. However, that particular stress, the moment it becomes chronic and there are certain symptoms, for example in the form of various metabolic disorders, then only we realize that the stress has become chronic. So in its acute form or in its mild form, we often call it in a medical terminology mild cognitive inhibitions or mild cognitive disorders. We don't realize. We only realize when it has become chronic. Now, let us come to the terms. The first one is anxiety. Let us understand anxiety in the sense that it is always a negative emotional state that is associated with extreme uneasiness and nervousness, worry, and apprehension. So, let us have a workable definition of anxiety as a negative activation or arousal of the body. Second is stress. Now, stress, as we all know, can be positive as well as negative. As we all know that eustress is known as a good stress, wherein a person becomes ready for the next task at hand, probably just before the interview or just before an examination. It keeps us ready. It keeps our systems optimally activated in order for us to be prepared for the task at hand. Next is that there are various demands. I mean, it's a non-specific. Why? Because still the research is not able to define stress, which is universally accepted. We often respond to various demands. For example, today's demands is to stay healthy, to be balanced in the time of lockdown. I mean, somebody else might be having a challenge to live with his or her friends. I mean, somebody may have a challenge of living in a containment zone. Somebody may have a challenge or a particular demand, a new demand, which has arisen all of a time, all of a sudden, to that particular person to adjust with, his or her whole family. Because many people are there, I have seen, have not been spending a lot of time with their spouses or with their family members. So they had this particular new challenge, spending 12 hours, 24 hours interacting with the family members, interacting with the children. So this itself creates a kind of non-specific demand on our psychophysiological system. Similarly, the work pressure. For example, earlier we used to think that being as a teacher, that whenever we have to go to the college, we take 2 to 3 classes and then we are back home. We are happily, attending to various other demands of our family and of the external sources. But now the teachers are especially under pressure, I think. The pressure is, I would say, a demand. I mean, it's a stress. Now, if you take it positively, it becomes eustress. If you think negatively about that, it becomes anxiety. The pressure or demands can be in the form of filling up certain forms, preparing certain files online, and then submitting those files on time, giving assignments to the students, then checking or evaluating their assignments, and various other such factors. And external sources means any kind of physical demands, geographical conditions, for example, extreme high temperature or extreme low temperatures. So all these demands can be either external or they can be generated through our self-imposed factors. For example, the self-imposed demands can be that I want to deliver to the best of my quality. I want to deliver sessions. The classroom interaction I want to make is as interesting as it was during the offline classes. Then there can be a pressure from probably university or IQAC, to design a curriculum which is suitable for the children of all ages. The children or the students who are living in the villages. where the internet connectivity is a problem. Earlier, they used to visit the library, but library is not there. So we need to generate our own notes. We need to generate our own resources to make study material accessible to the students who are living in the remote places. Then there can be various self obligations that many people are waiting for their promotions. It is not happening. So what will happen during this particular time of COVID-19 when there is a lockdown going on? When the vivas, PhD vivas are taking place online, why is it so that our promotions are not being considered, or we are not able to deliver certain physical exercises or yogic sessions? People are fed up of using these cameras and doing it online, because see, there is altogether a lot of difference between conducting a class offline and conducting a class online. This itself creates a lot of stress. So how do you take it? Some people are enjoying it, some people are ignoring it, some parents are not paying the fees, and not they are attending the classes with a fear that the moment they will attend classes they will have to maybe pay the fees. In some of the schools this condition has come up. So this self criticism, self imposed demands, obligations on our part, which generate from inside, also create a vicious circle of harmful stress that we call distress. Then the next term is arousal. Let us understand arousal in the sense that it's a natural phenomena that takes place over the period of time from morning to evening. It is a general physiological and psychological activation, as you can see in the definition, that varies on a continuum from deep sleep to intense excitement. So our body throughout the day tries to adapt to or adjust to or tries to maintain its homeostatic balance. So that particular process, when early morning, for example, we wake up, we are in a sort of slumber, and then slowly and gradually our system becomes activated to take up new challenges, and then we become more and more active. We start solving the problems, we start attending to the daily course, we start solving our own problems, doing multitasking, using the computers, taking sessions, checking the assignments. So whenever this prefrontal and frontal region of our brain is activated, and slowly and gradually as the day passes by evening, we again go back to that state of theta brainwave pattern. We call it delta theta brainwave pattern, when our brain needs rest. In yogic point of view, if I say our ida and pingala, there are two types of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system controlling energy channels inside our body. And as we go towards the end of the day, by the evening, our left nostril is more activated. I mean, the breathing rate is more visible, perceptible from our left nostril. We call it ida, and pingala is the right nostril. So this particular ability of ours, wherein the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system is going on from its circadian. If I talk about circadian rhythm point of view, if I talk about this natural process that goes on throughout the day, if we draw it in a graphical form, then we'll be able to understand the psychology of a human being. You must have heard about bipolar disorder. These people who are suffering from bipolar disorder, they do not have this particular natural rhythm of activation, deactivation from deep sleep to extreme uneasiness. Rather, it is very, very drastic. I mean, they miss out on deep sleep and becomes extremely over irritated at some moment of the time. So, which is an indication of their behavior of having some kind of disorder, and often we recognize it as a bipolar disorder. So this particular arousal also should be there, but the person should not be under aroused for a long duration of time, as well as over arousal is also harmful if it stays for a longer duration of time, which we call as the chronic arousal condition. Now let us see, I don't want to dwell too much upon this slide. A lot of stress, we all know, is causing metabolic disorder, the non-communicable diseases like high blood pressure and various other joint-related disorders and diabetes, which is costing a lot. I mean, some people have actually tried to quantify through their researches that how these particular problems that arise because of extreme stress and chronic anxiety conditions, and how they increase our allostatic load and cause a lot of discomfort, a lot of production of free radicals inside our body, because our entire system, see, it's our immune system and it's our complete psychophysiological system that is at stake. So we need to, through various methods, pinpoint the actual cause. It's not about the treatment by seeing the symptoms or seeing the effects, just as we use painkillers to suppress certain kind of systems. It is all the more important to understand the root cause. That's where the spiritual, the holistic point of view of managing stress, tension, and anxiety comes. And in terms of quantifying this, various researchers have shown that people who are suffering from some kind or the other kind of stress or anxiety, there are various related illnesses for which they seek treatment in the form of, for example, nutritional supplements, over the counter nutritional supplements. And in many developed countries, people often use multivitamins or single vitamin doses, which is all the more very, very dangerous, because not just in terms of formation of habits, but also they become ineffective when we use them over a longer period of time. I'll be dwelling more upon this in the later slides. So here are some of the, let us come to the solution part of the psychological and physical issues. I'll be focusing first on psychological conventional treatments, and then later I'll be talking about the physical aspects of asanas, because I'll be talking more on asanas in the sense that people just keep on doing the asanas or physical postures or aerobics exercise without knowing the actual effect. So my objective will be to make you understand the effect of asanas in a very subtle form. How various kind of asanas, what are the different types of muscles which are involved, what is the role of tendons and ligaments, and how does fasting and fascia affects our well-being. So to begin with, there are two conventional treatments here on your slides, as you can see on your screens. Number one is the medication. As I said earlier, that there is no particular study which has shown that healthy people should be using various kinds of antibiotics or as you can see, SSRI. SSRI is the specific serotonin rehabilitation inhibitors. And second one is the tricyclic anxiety related medicines, which people often consume, in the form of tablets, in the form of injections or pills. No doubt that people who are suffering from chronic problems, those who are overweight, I mean, they can't do anything else, especially people who are in the severe depression states, these particular medicines, help them, but to a very limited extent, but not without the side effects. For example, these serotonin rehabilitation reuptake inhibitors, what they do is actually they make the availability of serotonin hormones in the blood circulation to a greater extent. When these serotonin hormones are actually not reabsorbed by the synaptic junctions or the particular synapse, what happens is that their volume increases in the bloodstream. So they make us feel good, and they give us the feeling of happiness, and we are able to get good night's sleep. Whereas all the time they are working inside our system, inside our neurons. There is no such a study that actually specifically says that this is useful. And then the more and more dependence on these medications also causes the other kind of cycle of fear psychosis. We call it fear-induced diseases syndrome. Fear-induced diseases syndrome is that I know that I am not well. So because I am not well, my body starts producing the harmful hormones like endorphins, the cortisols, and because I am not well, this particular feeling makes me take some medications. Now, I am dependent upon these medications, thinking that the medication is working. So let us try to understand that actually it is not the medication which is working. at a certain medication works to a certain extent. It makes us feel that it is working, but actually it may not be working. It may be doing harm to our liver. It may be doing harm to our kidneys. Similarly, the antidepressants are also prescribed by the medical doctors. If you see the present day biopsychosocial model of the biomedical science, you will come to know that all the approaches by medical doctors, all the approaches by the psychotherapists have become holistic in nature. Not all the time they ask the patients to consume medicines. Slowly and gradually, by introducing the holistic methods of yoga, meditation, exercise therapies, Ayurveda, and naturopathy, the medication dosage is reduced slowly and gradually. And one of these methods is psychotherapy. Now, in psychotherapy, there are two types of psychotherapies which are given. One is the behavior therapy. Behavior therapy is simply practicing diaphragmatic breathing, getting used to diaphragmatic breathing with full mindfulness. You understand mindfulness? Mindfulness is actually whatever act we do, we call it mindfulness. For example, if we are listening to a particular lecture, if we are listening to the session mindfully, then that is meditation. As simple as that. I define meditation as any task which you are doing with full concentration and dedication at that particular moment of time. You are in the system, you are in that particular moment. That becomes meditation. So basically what these yogic techniques or meditation techniques are doing is, you must have seen, as a common protocol, we often tell you to concentrate on your breath. Sometime before that, even we tell you to concentrate on some sounds which are coming from far away, coming from outside the room in which you are meditating. So in a sense, what we are doing is, we are bringing you to that present moment. So that is why often what happens is that people who are suffering from various psychological disorders, either they are always or most of the time thinking about their past, or they are worried about their future. So the moment they start living in the present, 80% of the work is done. Now you are concentrating on your breath means you are living in the present. When you are concentrating on the sounds which are coming from outside of the room where you are meditating, you are actually in the present. Similarly, we tell you to concentrate on the sounds which are coming from inside the room. For example, any kind of insects noise, or the noise of the fan which is running, or noise of the AC which is coming. So please concentrate on that sound. So this particular psychotherapy or behavior therapy of bringing you into the present situation, and then we tell you to go inside. Try to listen to the different sounds which are coming from inside your body. For example, your heart rate. Can you hear it? Can you please concentrate on your breath? So this particular therapies of making you to be present, to be mindful of your posture, to be mindful about your body in this space, to be mindful of what exactly you are feeling or you are doing without being judgmental, is meditation itself. It is not going into samadhi, but it paves the way for leading to samadhi. Similarly, we give exposure therapy. Exposure therapy means here we ask the person to go in that particular embarrassing situation which has already taken place, or maybe it is going to take place. For example, somebody has a stage fear. Somebody has the fear of preparing online notes or delivering sessions, or maybe somebody might have a particular inhibition to going and speaking to a particular group of people, or presenting in a board meeting. So that particular person is made to go deep and visualize that particular stage wherein one has to deliver a session. And we often bring vivid images through auto suggestion or through the suggestion from the yoga therapist, that you have to imagine that you are climbing the stairs, you are calm and composed. Imagine that you are looking beautiful, you have gone to the stage, people are acknowledging you, they are clapping for your presence, you have that particular confidence, And now give yourself a beautiful smile, and you are fully prepared for the particular session which you are going to deliver, or particular speech which you are going to deliver. Everybody is so very praiseworthy of you. So all these positive affirmations from outside, extrinsic feedback we call it, are given to that particular person, and the person is actually imagining that situation. Now what happens is, often you lose track. I mean, it's quite natural. We then tell you that please don't feel regret at all, even if you are not able to follow my instructions. Just come back slowly and gradually, without any regret, and try to listen to the whatever instructions are given to you slowly, and visualize as clearly as possible. So whatever nervousness or whatever stress or anxiety that person was feeling by going on stage, is actually that person is exposed to the positivities of that particular uh, uh, action. So what happens is that whatever distress that particular stage presentation was causing to that person, the person is actually translate that particular confidence in the actual situation. This has happened many a times. A lot of studies have shown. I mean, there is a criticism also in the scientific fraternity that whatever you do in a lab is actually under extremely controlled conditions. So how can you be so sure that whatever we learn in a ideal situation of a lab where everything is so smooth and calm, how can you be so sure that whenever the person is going to go to the sports field, that will be automatically translated into positive things? There is a very high probability that people will be shouting and then the person might feel nervous at that moment. Yes, there are factors, but with the repeated practice, you can gain control over your stress and tension and anxiety. This is called exposure therapy. Similarly, in cognitive behavior therapy, many of the psychologists who are connected with this session must be aware that how different types of cues are given to that individual to form his or her own positive affirmations in that particular moment of time, wherein the person replaces the bad memories. For example, we may be regretting that earlier, something had happened, some argument, I should have done that, I should have said that. So in the cognitive behavior therapies, what we do is, whatever disturbing thoughts of the past are bothering you, we try to replace those thoughts with the correct and positive thoughts. So the person tries to also adjust to those particular things and learn slowly and gradually. However, it is extremely important, I must say here, that these cognitive behavior therapies and the exposure therapies must be done under the supervision of a qualified psychologist or a psychotherapist. Because what happens is, if you are not doing it correctly, it's just like a sharp knife. If you used it correctly, it will cut the vegetables. If you use it wrongly, it will cut your fingers. Sorry. Okay. So here I come to the physical aspect. I don't want to dwell too much upon these things. I think I have a limited time, probably another 10 minutes, and next 10 minutes for question answer session, if I'm not wrong. I'll be talking about the physical aspect of asanas. See, basically, the origin of asanas in various scriptures of yoga, you will find that whatever physical exercises or physical stretches, especially I'm talking about the flexibility part of the asanas, not the strengthening. Although the new research is saying that whenever you do stretching exercises, actually you are strengthening your body as well, because the muscles always contract. They may be elongating or they may be shortening, but contraction is always there. So asanas, physical posture or the physical asanas as we call them, are often used to bring about suppleness and stability. And some people don't call them postures or poses. Many of the researchers have started calling them poise. So it is extremely important that the shortening and lengthening balance is maintained. That is why we often, while giving the asanas, we tell people to do some asanas which are more taxing on your musculature. And after that asana, we tell you to do the counter posture. For example, if you are doing forward bending, then your longissimus dorsi and your trapezius muscles of the back, they are actually lengthening. Whereas the contraction or shortening of your abdominal muscles is happening when you're doing forward bending asanas. For example, to talk about Paschimottanasana or Padhastasana in a standing position, when we do, what is happening is that your agonist and antagonist muscles are being involved. So in a sense, whenever you do postures, either side bending or forward bending or even twisting, there is a balance between shortening and lengthening of the muscles. What happens is, if you are doing only forward bending asanas and not doing backward bending asanas, it brings imbalance in the body. Imbalance causes injury, and whenever there is an overcompensation by the other muscles, just because you have performed only the backward bending asanas and you are not doing the counter forward bending asanas, your muscles try to overcompensate. One is supercompensation, the other is overcompensation. Let us try to understand this. Whenever you are doing balanced asanas, that is, you are balancing between forward, backward, sideways, and stretching exercises and the lengthening exercises, there is a supercompensation in the sense that our muscles do not come back to their natural state of relaxation. We call it muscle tone. We call it supercompensation. But when there is an imbalance, when we are doing only one particular type of exercises and not doing the lower body exercises, for example, doing only the upper body exercises, our body tries to overcompensate. And doing overcompensation means the other muscles try to compensate the movements. So what happens is there is an imbalance, and that leads to injury. Similarly, for functional strength and functional flexibility, many people, as they grow old, find it very difficult to bend forward and tie their shoelaces, for example. Why? Because their lower back problems are increasing. Their fascia has become very tight. Their muscles have become very tight. That is why unlocking of the shoulder joints, unlocking of the hip joints, and various forward and backward bending asanas are also performed. Similarly, there is a piriform syndrome. Piriform syndrome occurs in those people who are used to sitting for a longer duration of time. So piriform is a very important muscle which is very closely situated close to, let me see, okay, I don't have that figure. It is very closely associated with the sciatica nerve. Everybody knows sciatica nerve. It is close to the L5 and S1 intersection, that particular junction of the intervertebral muscles. The sciatica nerve is associated with that. And piriform muscle is the muscle which is on the sideways of the pelvic region. Small muscle, but very, very important for those people who are actually spending time for a longer duration in sitting. So what happens is this particular piriform muscle shortens in length. And whenever we try to get up or do any kind of activities after prolonged sitting, it causes pain. As simple as that. Pain occurs only when the sciatica nerve is actually pressed between the bones. So this particular muscle, it becomes weakened, it becomes atrophied, and it becomes shortened. This is the reason of low back pain. And this particular muscle, piriform, is associated with the deep internal hip rotation and external rotation also. So whenever this particular sciatica nerve problem occurs, we try to give the twisting asanas. Twisting asanas means Vakrasana or Ardha Matsyendrasana or Purna Matsyendrasana. So the people who are in the habit of, or by default, they are supposed to sit for a longer duration of time, must perform these twisting asanas. For more reference, I would like to give you the example of runners. The runners have a problem wherein their lower back muscles become tight and shortened. So that is why there is a more tendency among the women runners, female runners, because of their different body shape, because of their hip region being wider and the knees are closer to each other in comparison to the male body. If you talk about the biomechanics in running, they are often told to do Shashangasana or any kind of asanas, for example, butterfly posture. You must have seen wherein we pull both the feet together towards our groin region, and then we push down our knees. We call it Titli Asana also. You must have heard about that. So 15% of the moisture is actually lost inside our body by the time we reach adulthood. This is a natural phenomenon. I mean, we can't stop this phenomena, but yes, we can always delay this particular phenomena. So I was talking about asanas, that is why I'm showing you these pictures. Now, whenever we are getting more prone to lesser activity, whenever we are spending more time in sitting, just because our metabolic rate has become slow, there is a tendency that our muscle fibers start adhering to each other, and they develop cellular cross links that prevent the parallel fibers from moving independently. So slowly and gradually, what happens is that these elastic fibers, these muscle fibers, get bound with the collagenous connective tissue. You understand collagenous connective tissues, that is fascia inside our body, and all these elastic muscle fibers, when they become bunch, what happens is that they lose this particular fluid inside them, and they become more and more unyielding. Same happens whenever to give you an example of how we produce leather. If you have seen that whenever we use the animal hides, the animal skin, what happens is we have to tan it, by beating it again and again, by drying it. So same way, what happens is whenever we are not using our muscles, they become like leather. Leather, you must have seen, is very tight component. So whenever you remove the fascia, whenever you remove those tendons and those muscle fibers and those elastic fibers from the leather, you will find that hide, you will find that it turns into strong hard leather. Now, what happens is that stretching stimulates the production of these tissue lubricants, and it pulls the interwoven cellular crosslinks apart. Why? Because these particular cross sectionals need to be pulled up. The moment you pull them up, they again fall back into that particular parallel formation. So this is how our muscles respond. And to talk about the structures which are closely associated are tendons, ligaments, and then muscle fascia. So I won't be talking much about these things because I have probably very less time left, another 5 minutes. And as informed to me, probably you have another sessions also, parallel session after 11 a.m. But I'll talk about muscle fascia. 30% of the total muscle mass consists of our muscle fascia. So whenever we are doing any kind of rubbing postures, for example, even when a chronic patient who is suffering from chronic pain, who is not able to perform any movement, we give them transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, or we give them massage, or in yoga therapy we call it marma chikitsa. So we are actually, what we are doing is we are activating this muscle fascia. This is 40% of a muscle total. Whatever total muscle is present, the muscle fascia comprises of the total 41% of that resistance to movement. Now, fascia is something that separates the individual muscle fibers and bundles, and then binds them into working units. You must have seen, if you've seen the muscle structure, if you go very deeply, the microscopic structure, you will find the muscle spindles. Now, these particular muscle spindles, which are in thousands, which are innervated by our nervous system, also by the various neurons when they form the synapse, are actually into different shapes, irregular and regular shapes. So this particular structure is given by this fascia. So many of the people are actually now focusing in their yoga classes and in their naturopathy treatments on activation and rejuvenation of this muscle fascia. Because what happens is, this is the only structure whose lubrication, whose circulation and the mobility and the healing is the very important factor for healthy back muscles or healthy circulation inside our body. And whenever we do stretching exercises, actually this particular fascia is stretched to the greatest safety. Why? Because tendon has a limit. Even ligaments cannot be stretched too much. If you stretch your ligaments and tendons too much, they will cause injury, or it will cause you not perform the reflex activities or fine motor control activities suffer. So whenever you are stretching too much, that also becomes harmful for our body. So let us be very careful that any asana, in the end, I would like to say, if you want to bring real changes, whatever asana you do, scientifically speaking, the latest research says that you must hold that particular stretch for at least 60 to 90 seconds. Then only that particular fibrous connective tissues, which are called collagens and elastins, are associated with the other gel-like structures will be able to give you better results. I don't want to dwell too much upon reciprocal innervation. I have already said that our muscles are actually performing in agonist and antagonist form, as you can see on your screen, this good morning exercise. Now, this first posture, if you can concentrate on this posture, this is a forward bending posture, wherein our abdominal muscles, especially this rectus abdominis, the frontal muscles, are actually contracting. And this antagonist muscle, that is the longissimus dorsi muscle, the trapezius muscles at the back, and the hamstring muscles, which are at the back of our thigh, are actually getting lengthened. Similarly, we are performing the counter postures of backward bending or sideways bending. Here you can see this particular muscle on the right side is acting as a is elongating. It is antagonist, and this particular muscle on the side is actually shortening. So this becomes the agonist. So this is what we call as reciprocal inhibition. Similarly, there is a new concept in exercise therapy which has come up that says that whenever we perform any posture, for example, in Paschimottanasana, everybody knows how we perform it. We stretch our legs in the front and we then try to touch our toes or our forehead to our knees. In this particular posture, whenever we are giving the exercises, we ask the person to pull their toes towards themselves. Now, while doing so, what happens is that your hamstring muscles gets tightened, it gets shortened. And immediately after that, we tell the person to release the hamstring muscle tightness and then try to bend forward. This is we call process as the proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. In this, what happens is we are actually shortening a particular muscle first, and then we are releasing that muscle so that it gets elongated. And you will find if you do it 5 to 6 times, many of the people are able to perform that particular Paschimottanasana with tight back or tight hip muscles to a greater accuracy, to a greater range of movement. So that's what I wanted to tell you. There are many other things like GTO flexibility training, which has come up recently. And then we use various props also for the elderly or the chronic patients or people whose muscles have atrophied over the period of time. So that particular muscle re-education programs in therapeutic and rehabilitation programs also need to be carefully monitored before we give any kind of therapy. That is why I tell you that please be in touch with a certified trainer only who are, have been dealing with the patient, especially if you want to get a therapy. If you are otherwise physically well, then you should not be aggravating your particular situation. For example, in the case of volleyball players, we have seen that if they are performing Vajrasan for a longer duration of time, their ability to jump, their ability to use explosive power muscles has reduced drastically. So we have to be very careful while dealing with such situations. And of course, in the end, I would like to mention that there are stretch receptors which are present all over our muscles. Everywhere it is, our nervous system is closely connected with these stretch receptors which send signals to our brain. So whenever we are doing yogic asanas or any kind of exercises, there is this release of feel-good hormones called endorphins or serotonins or oxytocin. It happens because the signal from the muscle through these stretch receptors goes to the brain, and the brain then again gives command and causes the release of feel-good hormones. So this particular feel-good hormones can also be released by doing fasting. For example, overweight people are given fasting, and by activating our vagal tone. So about vagal tone and vagus nerve, maybe we will talk next time. So that's it for today. I want to give some references to you if you want to gather some more information, knowledge about today's presentation. And I specifically recommend this Yogic Management of Stress, a hand manual by Swami Suranand Saraswati. So please go through this if you want to have elaborate information about the anatomy and physiology of various asanas. Thank you very much. If you have any queries, you are most welcome. These are my contact details. In case I'm not able to reply today, then you can contact me later. Thank you. I'm stopping to share my slides.
Any question?
I must thank Dr. Vikram जी. आपने एक बहुत डिफरेंट एस्पेक्ट के साथ आज हमें योगा एंड मेडिटेशन, आई मस्ट से, एंड it's a total different experience to listen to you. Very positive, very
Thank you.
with all that details. एक उस एस्पेक्ट से जो हम में से कोई नहीं सोच रहा है, बिकॉज ऑफ योर नॉलेज, और आपने सिंपल तरीके से उसको समझाया है दैट वी आर रियली ऑनर्ड टू हैव यू, और ये एक सेशन हमारे लिए काफी नहीं है. I must admit, on behalf of all my colleagues, we will definitely have you back and get to the root of more, all the more. आज जो आपने इतना ज्ञान दिया ना, उसके बेसिक लेवल पे हम जाके वहां से शुरू करना चाहेंगे. As a biology student, I have understood. Many of my other colleagues के लिए थोड़ा सा शायद ये ओवरबोर्ड ना हो गया हो, but yes, आपकी बात को हम समझ चुके हैं कि stress and anxiety are part of life, but too much is that. Either too much of stress or too much of anxiety is not good, and we must do everything to strike a balance. The first thing to begin with is, as you said early in the morning, is never to take it as a problem, take it as an opportunity, as a challenge to overcome this.
True.
I'm really thankful. पर अभी कहते हैं ना, हमारी नॉलेज की भूख खत्म नहीं हुई है, satisfied नहीं हुई है. We would be welcoming you again.
Actually, what is happening is, sorry to interrupt you, हम लोग ना या तो थ्योरी ले पाते हैं या सिर्फ प्रैक्टिकल सेशन ले पाते हैं. होता क्या है, ऑफलाइन मोड के अंदर, जैसा आपकी टीचिंग में आप सफर कर रहे हैं, जब हम कराते हैं और बताते हैं तो उसका इम्पैक्ट एक अलग ही आता है.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं सर, तभी कह रहे हैं ना, कुछ ज्ञान आया है, लेकिन अभी और जब तक सामने आमने नहीं होंगे या और आपको ध्यान से नहीं सुनेंगे, जहां टाइम की रिस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं होगी, विल बी बेनिफिटिंग मोर. सर, आपके साथ साथ हमारे और कलीग्स ने जिन्होंने इसको सुना, या हमारे स्टूडेंट्स हैं, हमारे गवर्निंग बॉडी मेंबर्स हैं, सरस्वती जी, वी हैव मिस्टर जीवेश तिवारी ऑल्सो. और ये बात सर बहुत होती है कि जब एक इंस्टीट्यूशन के मैनेजमेंट के लोग भी आपके साथ जुड़ते हैं और आपका टॉपिक इतना आज की डेट में यूजफुल है, उसको हर कोई सुनना चाहता है, तो एक अलग ही मोटिवेशन मिलती है कि यस, वी आर गोइंग इन द राइट पाथ. और हमें जिन लोगों से नॉलेज मिल रही है, वी आर ऑलवेज ऑनर्ड, एंड विद ग्रेटिट्यूड आई मस्ट थैंक यू. Thank you so much, Vikram ji. Thank you so much.
If there are any questions, then you are most welcome.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions on the chat. Dr. Surinder, you can take the questions up, please.
Okay, to save time, can I read one? The Sonu Mehta ji ने question पूछा है. Could you please share with us some physical activity to work as mute button, wow, and delete button for our thoughts? काफी क्रिएटिव लगते हैं सोनू मेहता जी. As most of, काफी नॉटी भी लगते हैं. As most of our stress is caused by our own thoughts. Yeah, true, you can do that. जैसे मैं आपको बताऊं, गणेश मुद्रा, एक आप मुझे देख पा रहे हैं यदि वीडियो के ऊपर, तो मैं आपको एक गणेश मुद्रा बताता हूँ. इससे क्या होगा ना, इमीडिएटली थॉट स्टॉप हो जाएंगे आपके. गणेश मुद्रा के अंदर हम क्या करते हैं, 3 तरह की मुद्राएं मैं आपको बता देता हूँ. आई थिंक आपके पास समय है ना अभी 2-3 मिनट का?
जी सर.
ओके. One is the Ganesh Mudra, wherein you keep your right hand cusped and over the left hand, both are cusped, and then you hold your hand like this, right? And you have to apply an optimum force outside, right? And keep your elbows outside as well, so that there is a little bit of stress which is generated on your shoulders. Please don't raise your shoulders. And in this particular condition of optimal muscle contraction, you have to just inhale and exhale slowly. And do it 5 to 7 times, and keep on maintaining this particular contraction. So this will make your brain immediately thoughtless. See, the most important thing today is to become thoughtlessness. We are always thinking and planning and regretting and plotting something or the other. Number 2, whenever there is too much of thoughts, just sit relaxed with your erect back and अपनी जीभ को मोड़कर ऊपर तालू पे लगा लीजिए on your upper palate, right? So immediately you will see that you will become thoughtless. Second is another mudra, we call it Hakini mudra. You can join the tips of your fingers like this and just keep it on your lap and inhale and exhale for 5 to 10 minutes. This is also a wonderful kriya with which, postures or mudra, I would say, with which you can immediately kind of mute your overwhelming thoughts, or I won't say you will be able to delete them, but you will learn slowly and gradually to ignore them. See, in yoga and meditation, it is very important not to resist the thoughts, but to be aware about your thoughts. So the moment you are deeply just monitoring and being aware of your thoughts, they will automatically vanish. And whenever you are engaged in again a lot of nervousness or thoughtfulness, please try to ignore without any regret and come back to that particular homeostatic balance state will be restored. Automatically it will be restored. There is another query by Richa Sharma. During these times when the physical activity is quite limited, how can active metabolism be maintained, especially among children who are forced to sit through online classes most of the day? I think the best exercise these days, which I am doing, is body tapping. But you must learn how to tap your body effectively. That activates your fascia itself, number one. Number two, I think you can do a lot of Zumba and aerobics exercises at home, and various twisting postures. Because of prolonged sitting, as I said earlier, there is this piriform syndrome. Piriform muscle becomes shortened. So in order to activate your entire body, you have to maintain the balance of exercises or stretching postures. For example, Surya Namaskar itself, if you do 4 rounds, not more than 5 minutes. So there is a capsule of 10 to 15 minutes which involves strengthening, stretching, as well as aerobics. If you want, then I can share that capsule with you. That involves 9 sitting postures, 9 standing postures, 7 mobility postures, and after that followed by certain breathing exercises, and that will automatically lead you to meditation also. I can definitely share it with you if the principal permits. I'll send it to you. You can contact the principal. I'll share it so that it can be disseminated.
और प्रिंसिपल तो चाहेंगी, परमिशन का तो सवाल ही नहीं है. It's your generosity कि आप हमारे साथ शेयर करेंगे, सर. Thank you so much.
Sir, there is one more question from our student Devanshi Dubey. Devanshi, you can ask.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I just wanted to ask that how does background noises or white noises which we use for more concentration or more specifically ASMR noises, what does role that they play in concentration while studying?
Background noise, you meant to say?
Background noises like rain sounds. People tend to listen rain sounds.
Yeah. Okay.
And the continuous noises. There are some noises in YouTube like theta waves and delta waves. How does they play role in concentration?
Yeah, you mean to say the background music? Yeah, there are a lot of researches which has taken place on supplementing. It's a kind of integrated approach we call. For example, there is a latest trend of using soothing sounds. It can be mantras also, but I am not much in favor of these mantras, because whatever experimental studies I have conducted is, I have found that whenever you yourself generate those sounds through the ucharan of Om, for example, Om. Now what is happening here is that there are more number of your internal senses which are involved, rather than listening to a sound which is coming from outside. So a comparative study was done on biofeedback meditation with particular sound and biofeedback meditation with the recitation of Om chanting. So the people who were doing Om chanting and they were given certain kind of visualization training, for example, the progressive muscle relaxation or yoga nidra, they showed more promising results rather than the background sounds. To some people, these background sounds actually acted as a more of a distraction, not always, but most of the studies, rather than helping them. So I think whatever sounds or whatever rhythm or whatever holistic kind of atmosphere we can create through the recitation of certain sounds from inside, like Om or Arham, are more effective in taking you deep into meditation. That is my research or my study which has shown. However, in these days, whenever you go to any spa or any kind of treatment or therapy, you will find people using the therapist use aromas also, specific smell, and then certain kind of soothing musics. So what happens is that if the instructions are meaningful and systematic, which are given by the yoga therapist, then it will take you more deep and quickly into meditation rather than using outside sounds, which I find common for all. There are certain sounds which you may be not comfortable with. जैसे कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जब भी मैं जो पियानो साउंड है, ब्रायन सेलस की जो पियानो की साउंड है, वो मेरे लिए ज्यादा सूदिंग है रादर देन कि पीछे कोई और म्यूजिक प्ले हो रहा हो. कई लोगों के लिए क्या होता है, जो समुद्र के अंदर सी शोर में बैठकर एक वेव्स की साउंड आती है ना, they are more soothing, whereas for some people they are not much soothing. So it depends, it has to be tailor made kind of sound if at all you are using it.
Thank you very much, sir.
थैंक यू सर.
डॉक्टर सुरेंद्र, हमारे और भी कलीग्स हैं जिन्होंने लिखा हुआ है चैट बॉक्स में. डॉक्टर प्रीति सहगल ने लिखा है, सर कैन यू प्लीज गाइड अस फॉर सम आसन्स टू स्टॉप और रिड्यूस द हैबिट ऑफ ओवरथिंकिंग.
Yes, every asana, every posture starts with certain mobility exercise. See, what is happening in the yoga classes is that in order to conduct more and more classes and more money, the yoga teachers are giving very tough and quick exercises. Please be very careful. जब भी आप किसी योगा क्लास में जाते हैं तो ये देखिएगा कि जो भी मोबिलिटी एक्सरसाइज स्टार्टिंग में कराई जाती हैं, they should be very slow and they should be performed mindfully. जैसे कि आप मुझे यदि देख पा रहे हैं, ये मैंने फिंगर्स को इंटरलॉक किया, राइट. Whenever I am stretching my hands in the front, I am exhaling and I am bringing back, it is inhale. Now I am taking my hands upward, exhale, bringing your hands down, inhale. Now bring your hands down and then again back to your chest. So whatever mobility exercises or whatever yogic postures you are doing, please do them mindfully. Again, mindfully means staying in the present. So the key word is that whatever you do for the first 5 to 10 minutes, make a conscious effort to stay or be present to that particular posture which you are doing. That itself acts as a very good stimulus for you to forget about your past and not to worry about your future.
Sir, we have Mr. Ravidat Kaushik, and he is asking, please let me know the posture of Manduk Asan and Ardh Matsyandra Asan.
Yes, please. The Manduk Asan can be performed either in the sitting position or you can do it in the forward bending position also. But forward bending for only those who have very strong muscle stabilizers. In the Manduk Asan, which is primarily performed in the sitting position, what you do is you actually make a fist of your hands like this, wherein your fingers are wrapped over your thumb and it is placed just close to your navel region, not on the navel region but on the sides, left and right. And then in Vajrasan position, you tend to bend forward. But please make sure the people who are suffering from any kind of chronic stomach disorders or vertigo should not perform this posture. This is a very powerful posture wherein while exhaling, you should bend forward. And if you have any kind of lower back problem, please don't bend forward. You just can raise your head up and bend as much as you can. See, Sahaj Sthir Sukham Asanam. In yoga, you must perform slowly using props, and then later on you can build up to develop that resilience of your muscles over the period of time through practice. And second asana was?
Ardh Matsyandra Asan.
It is a physical posture. I can't demonstrate right now because I am in the civil uniform. I think you should consult a good yoga therapist for that, because that is also very powerful asana. And I prefer that asana most of the time, because giving you the analogy of a wash rag cloth, जैसे पोछा मारते हैं ना, पोछा गीला करने के बाद हम उसको निचोड़ देते हैं. So whatever you are doing these twisting Ardha Matsyendra and Purna Matsyendra asanas, according to Iyengar, what happens is that your body kind of, blocks that circulation for a momentarily, and then when you release that asanas, immediately there is a flush of blood. The entire circulatory system becomes highly active. So that particular blood that reaches the various regions with a flush, helps you make your body more rejuvenated, and the excretion of the kidneys and excretion of the liver function, the kidney function increases. That is why the Vakrasana, before doing Ardha Matsyendra asana, please try to do Vakrasana. Immediately, and doing it with a jerk it can be very, very harmful for your lower back. So we have to be very careful, slowly try to build up by doing certain twisting asanas which are comfortable, using the props also. If you have any back related issues, then you can slowly and gradually increase your range of movement by practicing the modified versions before doing the Purna Matsyendra asana, because it comes under the advanced level of asanas. Of course, you will get benefit even if you are doing the lower versions. There is no doubt about that. But maximum benefit can come with regard to your psychoneural conditions or neurophysiological conditions or psychosomatic, only when you are able to do it to the fuller extent, the fuller range of movement.
Thank you, sir. We have one more question. This is from Dr. Gitanjali. She's saying, sir, is there any solution for unusual tachycardia?
Yes, there are certain breathing exercises, but never do Bhastrika Pranayam when you have any kind of tachycardia related condition. Always do Sahaj Pranayam exercises or Anulom Vilom, but that too without holding your breath. I would say Sahaj Pranayama, Anulom Vilom, and whenever you do certain postures in the lying down condition with your hands raised above your head for a longer duration of time is going to take care of your condition. However, whenever you feel good, don't try to experiment with the things like stopping the medication or not taking care of your nutrition, because it has to be a holistic approach, not just doing physical exercises, but taking adequate nutrition as well.
Thank you, sir. We have another query from Dr. Deepak Shrivastava. He says, I'm suffering from right hand polio. This always makes me to ignore yoga. What should I do?
See, in this particular condition, there must be certain kind of muscle groups which has become atrophied over the period of time. So even if it is a polio, there is nothing to worry. If your vital organs are working perfectly all right, your liver, your kidneys, your pancreas, your gallbladder is working perfectly all right, you can perform any posture with any level of difficulty, as long as it is comfortable for you. As I said, Sahaj Sukham Asana. But please make sure that if you are not doing any postures, then later on you may tend to have a pot belly or other kind of metabolic disorders. So just to take care of those conditions not coming, I don't know your age, I don't know how much you have been training or what is your thought process, but you must undertake some kind of lower body and upper body exercises which you can, because we have done various experiments with the adapted yoga experiments, or adapted yoga projects are also going on. So the people who have their vital organs or their medical parameters well in range, we have given them certain exercises, especially the meditation exercises to begin with. See, here I think the condition is not physical, it is more of a psychological. People tend to start doing yoga, but they drop out very early. And then they start blaming कि अरे योगा तो बेकार है, एक्सरसाइज से कुछ होता नहीं है, या मेरे पास टाइम नहीं है, जैसे आपने बताया कि I don't feel like starting it. So just start yogic postures. Before that, start doing pranayama, because that will bring you into that particular zone that yes, I have to do. And whenever you are doing simple exercises, your blood circulation will increase, your central nervous system will get good message, your good hormones are released inside the body, you will be, I suppose, automatically driven to doing asanas. As we said, say in teaching, that if the content is meaningful, the teacher is magnetic, the child will be automatically driven to learning. Because you can always take the horse to water, but you cannot make him drink the water unless and until there is a need.
Sir, we have last question. This is from Ms. Prama Vishnoi. She says, sir, which yoga postures would you suggest for people having slip disc problem?
Yeah. It is a very common problem. Slip disc problem was with me also. I struggled for it for about 7 to 8 years. But now, see, the main, let us try to understand the anatomy. The slip disc issue is primarily concerned with some kind of either injury has caused it, or because of, over the period of time, there is a multiple degeneration. And one particular slip disc has bulged out of its position. It has gone totally out of its condition. Now one is chronic, wherein it has to be operated upon, and then these particular structures which are hurting need to be taken out. But most of the time, in 90% of the time, if you go for naturotherapy, if you go for massage therapy, mud therapy, and certain restricted postures or using props, you will be able to easily manage this particular condition. And especially I would recommend Shalabhasana is excellent asana for slip disc. But please do not overdo. Then again, there is a video of 9 asanas which I can share with you, which are very useful. But you have to take care of your breathing pattern and also not to overdo those postures, which involve certain forward bending, backward bending, contraction, extension, and certain kind of hyperextension of the upper and lower body also. So whatever capsules or whatever asanas you do, make sure that each and every angle is taken care of while doing that posture. And whenever there is a pain in that particular posture, don't do that. Please remove or skip that particular asana. So this is better told offline rather than online. But yes, there are certain postures which are for the people who are having initial upcoming conditions, but not for the chronic conditions of back pain or slip disc.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, I can't thank you enough for answering all the queries which people have. I think Dr. Surinder, please take over. Yeah.
On the behalf of Department of Physical Education and IQAC members, Keshav Mahavidyalaya, extend very hearty vote of thanks to Dr. Vikram Singh for giving us his valuable time for today's webinar. During this tough time of pandemic, everyone is distressed. Yoga and meditation is the best way to handle the situation. Thank you to Dr. Vikram Singh giving us information and tips how to keep ourselves physically and psychologically healthy by doing yoga and meditation. Thank you, Dr. Vikram. I would like to thank our principal, Professor Madhu Puruti, for all words of wisdom that radiated a source of energy within us. My heartfelt thanks to IQAC team member, Dr. Anupma, Dr. Jagnit Anand, Dr. Roli Bansal, and convener Dr. Anju Aroda. And thanks to all faculty members for their support and encouragement. And thank you to all participants for showing their interest in the webinar. And special thanks to Ms. Nidhi Pasi for making the attractive poster in a short period of time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vikram. We shall be meeting you again and with the same team back at our end to help us. My IQAC members, all my IQAC members, उनको एक दिन के short notice पे कहा था कि ये event करना है और ज़रूरत है, and they did it. And I wish to thank all my audiences for those who are not from our institute but have come from other places also. I'm thankful to everyone. We shall be meeting you again, and we are ending on this note.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.